All right, the first step is to mark your wing for your ailerons. We've already pre-marked the center of the leading edge and the center of the trailing edge. And I'm just going to take the template, line it up, and I'll show you in a minute how it looks. And you see the front is marked, lined up, side's lined up. Oh, I move a little bit. Not a big deal, just kind of move it around. Doesn't have to be too precise, just enough. And then we're going to mark all the way through, puncture all the way through your foam for your aileron ends. Same thing on this side. And center here for the edge. This is where your control horn is going to be located. So we're going to mark there all the way through and mark there. Come back into this side, here, and here. And then for the aileron servo, we'll mark the outline of the hole we're going to cut for it. And again, you don't have to be too precise. You can use this same aileron, come down to the crease. Since we have glue here, you're going to move over just a little bit and get your aileron end in there. Go all the way through, because we're going to pick up those holes on the back side. Same thing on this side. Here's our crease, so we'll go right about there. And we'll go all the way through, and here. So now we got our markings. We are going to go ahead and just mark these out so we can follow along with the knife. Here and here. It's pretty straightforward. And here's where your control horns are going to go. Here and here. And then on the back side, we're going to pick up those holes that we had. So here's one hole here. Here's one hole here. Here's a hole here. And then our hole here is right about there. I'm not sure if your camera picks it up, but we'll go ahead and put a little bit of a light line right there. Oh, let me come over here a little bit. It's easier to find an edge so you don't bend your dihedral around. Okay, now we have a straight line coming here. And then a straight line coming down here as well. Now if you need a marker or a fancier little pin, so you can mark on the, so you can find that. And we'll do the same thing on the side as well. And this end here, this end's going to go right about here. And that is where our aileron's going to go, at our servo. All right, so now we're going to mark the servo for the elevator, where it goes. Find the edge of the table so you don't damage your elevator, and your template. And there's a hole here for the dowel, and that's where your template will go, right over that hole. And then your line, again, you don't have to be super accurate. This line here is where the edge is, where the bend is. And we're going to mark where the servo hole will be. So just put your pin in. You don't have to go all the way through in this case. But once it's marked, then we'll take our ruler and we'll mark here and here. And then here. And then I do, because I have tape down, slick surface I can use. Here she comes. Yeah. Oh, overshot. That's okay. That's it. Okay, so next is cutting the aileron hole and then the aileron themselves. Now this is going to go through a lot of foam. There's two types of knives you can use, an X-Acto knife and then a box cutter knife, whichever one works for you. In this case, I tend to like the X-Acto knife. We'll just take our time and make several cuts through until we get through, and slowly raise the blade, and it gets a little stiffer as you go along. And you notice you're going through a lot of layers of foam down below. And then because there's an angle on the blade, you turn around and you're able to go straight in. And a little saw action sometimes helps out as you go through. And start straight down and get the blade on a little bit of an angle here. Go nice and easy, a little slow. And then watch out for your fingers down below here. You don't get your fingers punctured. And then you should be able to push it through. If you're not sure, flip it over. Now you can see I didn't make it all the way through, so. And once you're through, it should pop in. Here's the back side. There you go. So there's that servo hole there. As long as it's over here, our next step is to cut here. So because of our dihedral, I tend to find the edge of a table like this. And then I use my box cutter for this. And so what we're going to do is these ends need to be cut completely. However, the hinge area will not. So we're going to lightly score here, just cutting through the top level of the paper and a little bit of the foam. And you'll see why in a minute. So score here. Don't go all the way through. And we'll do this side as well over here. Like that. And then we're going to go ahead and get comfortable on this side. So we'll start with this side here. And go ahead and cut all the way through. Same thing with this one here. The box cutter has a longer blade, so it helps you keep a straight line as you go through. And again, start with just a very light score so your blade can follow it. And then push down with your tip and draw back firmly. If you don't pull back firmly, or if you have a dull blade, your paper on the back side will start to peel up. So we're going to come over on this side here a little bit. Again, so we don't damage our dihedral. And there we go. So now we're all the way through on all ends. We should be able to take this and pop our ailerons, which are nice. Now, as you expect, aileron can go up, but it can't go down. And that's because we have foam on the backside. So we're going to go ahead and what's called a bevel cut. And the bevel cut, we go ahead and fold the aileron up. And we don't want to cut into the paper here, but we do want to cut on a 45. So I tend to kind of go up a little bit, and I watch this tip here, where the blade gets near the hinge of our aileron. Don't cut through the paper. If you do, don't worry, because you can always tape it to strengthen later. And we'll do the same thing on the side here. I start here. Here's the hinge. Can I go in? A little back and forth. There you go. All right. So now our aileron goes up and down, fully on both sides, which is great. Now what we'll do is we'll go ahead and reinforce these with some tape to make sure that they won't rip in the future. So we'll go ahead right over the edge of the aileron itself. Get a little bit of cut to our tape, and there. Now further, to strengthen this edge, make sure you recut your hinges so they work. Then also what we'll do to assist in our hinges to operate, we'll take our skewer that we have, and we're going to go ahead and have a little bit of tape there. We're going to take the skewer, and we'll just use it to open up this edge here a little bit. This will allow our ailerons to move freely. And if you want, you can cut back the extra so you don't get that sound. Our tape. All right. The other step you can take is to strengthen these, is to take a little bit of glue, very lightly, go right on the edge here. And this will keep the aileron from separating. And then with a scrap piece of foam, you're going to take this edge and make sure all that glue is gone. The same thing on this side here. This keeps your hinge from separating from the paper. Like that. And don't leave any, get it nice and clean, like a thin piece of tape. And let it sit, and you're done. All right, now we're going to cut out the elevator. Same thing, lightly go over your pencil marks so your blade can follow it. And a lot of this area will be covered up with glue and servo, so it's not too critical, but it helps it make it look nice. And if your hole is a little bit too small, don't worry, you can kind of force your servo in there and make it open up. If it's too big, again, don't worry, that's what glue's for, it'll fill up that hole. And that's it. Okay, so we're going to go and finish off our elevator. So we do need to score. Your kits may be scored enough, but if not, just gently score. Do not go all the way through. All you're doing is breaking that top surface from full end to full end, and gently pull it back. And you'll notice it's going to stop with this tail here, which is fine, because that's as far up as it needs to go. We just need to make sure it can go down. So what we're going to do is very gently, we're going to cut back our edge all the way through. And what I'm doing is I'm watching my tip of my blade in that crack way inside the hinge. And I'm slowly going to angle it so I can cut it all the way through. And now I can move down. Very similar. If you're able to back cut more, you can do that as well. I'm not going to do that at this point. What I will do is put a little bit of glue in there to keep that from separating out, like we do in the ailerons, all the way down. Just a little bit of glue. I missed a little bit. And then I'm going to take a piece and get rid of all the glue. Just leave a little bit of residual to hold the paper together. Get down deep, and your hinge is done. All right, so before you install your servos, put your servo arms on first. And one servo will have both sides of the arm, and the other servo will only have one side. In your kit, it'll come with the servos and the screws and the arms. You have to select the right ones. So these are the ones that we'll be using. And it's important to get them in what's called a neutral position. So the swing of the arms is the same, so you don't have too much up and not enough down, or vice versa on your control surfaces. You can hook it up with your transmitter receiver, or you can use something like this. This is the Servo Set-Up or tester. And what it allows you to do is control these servos outside your plane or your model itself. So I'll plug it in, and these are inexpensive. They're like $4 or something like that off Amazon. So you take these, and there's multiple positions. There's 3 positions. There's manual mode, to where I can manually move them. There's a neutral position, which we will use to put our linkages on. And again, if you've installed these or already, or if you need to do it the first time, this is the position you want to be. You can always take screws off and relocate on different spline and put them on, because they are splined shafts. Then there's a third mode, which you can see the full swing. Some servo testers will allow you to go full 180, but you can see servos don't actually go 180. So we're going to go back to neutral, and we're going to leave it there. Our next step is installing the elevator servo. Now, the elevator servo is the servo with only one side of the horn. It's not the double-sided horn. Go ahead and slide your wire in, and test fit first to make sure it fits. What's important here is the wires are on the front side of the plane. The horn is on the up position, in its neutral position that we just set. Once you're done, slide it down gently, take your glue gun, and put just a little bit of glue on this side and on this side, and hold it in there. That's all you need. You take your finger, you can kind of just get the excess off if it's not too hot and you're used to high temperatures, and you're done. Our next servo is the Aileron servo. Go ahead and slide it through. We're going to test fit to make sure it fits in there nicely. In this case, our wire is going to the back, and our our horns are in the back as well. We'll slide it through. It's going to be going through 3 levels, and it's fit fine. Looks good. So we're going to push it up a little bit, and we're going to add a little bit of glue on one side, glue on the other, and we're going to go ahead and push this puppy in. There's some excess glue. Luckily, my fingers are extra tough, and that is it. Next, we'll install the elevator control arm. The control horn. So the control horns come with a piece attached to it. Don't throw this piece away. This is actually retaining. Once we slide the control horn in, that'll be a retainer to keep it from falling out. But we'll also glue it. All right. So if we take a look at the kit, has a little line for where the control horn would go if we were in this side of the body. But our servo is actually on the outside. It's about a 1/2 inch off. So what we did is we marked a 1/2 inch over here where our control horn will go. When we install our control horn, it's important that these holes here line up pretty much over where the crease is of our elevator, or any control surface, even our ailerons and our rudders. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and take our X-Acto knife, and we're going to slice just gently in this area here. This is where the control horn will go. We're going to slide our control horn in like that. We're going to, I will visually line up where my holes are here over my hinge. Test fit it. It looks good. Pull out a little bit. I'm going to put a little bit of glue in there, like that. And if you do what I did, just got glue inside your hinge. You can get it out of there. You don't want it inside your hinge. Go ahead and double check where your holes line up, and they do pretty much line up there. And then we're going to come on this side, and that retaining piece that you took out earlier, we'll go ahead and slide it on to the top of our, squeeze the foam in between, and if you moved your control arm a little bit, go ahead and tighten her up, put it back in position. I always put a little bit of glue just to make sure it doesn't slide off, and that's it. And we're on. Okay, our next step is to put our linkages on. This process is the same for our ailerons, so we'll start with our elevator since it's just easier to see. This is a control linkage. It's an adjustable control linkage, and you'll notice it splits apart. There's a little tang on this side here. That tang, screw out towards the edge so you can access it. We're going to put the tang in the second hole from the bottom. And we can talk about why that one later on, but it's a good place for beginners. Then we're going to take our control arm, and we're going to come to our servo. Second hole, also from the screw. Good place for beginners. Kind of help it over. Now, it's important to make sure you haven't moved your servos, that they are in neutral positions. If they're not, get them in a neutral position. It should be right about in the middle. And for your surface, it wants to be in a neutral position also. What's important is that this servo and the control surface it operates are always in neutral position, so when you hook up your transmitter, it won't automatically go to one left or to the right or up or down. It just keeps everything in neutral positions. So this wire obviously is a little bit long. We left them long for your kits. And what we're going to do is we're going to make a mark and then trim back. And the mark we're going to make is between the control horn edge and the screw right in the middle. And make a little mark right about here. Now, you may not be able to see that, but I can see it. I'm going to slide it out. I get my pliers. Hold on to the edge so it doesn't hit somebody in the eye. Trim it off. And then your screw, if it's not in there, you have to install it. Install it before you attach it to your control horn. Make sure you have room. Back it out, and then you can bend the wire a little bit if you need to. So go inside the hole, and make sure your surface is level. The servo hasn't moved. And we'll go ahead and tighten this down. You may want to back that up with your finger a little bit. And it is plastic, so make sure you don't strip it out. But you'll definitely feel when it stops. So I did adjust a little bit too much. And now I can tighten it down. Okay, and now when I move my servo, my control surface moves. Sweet. That's it. All right, so we've done the same process for our ailerons as we did for the elevator. On the ailerons, it's going to be a little trickier because they're shorter as you go through. Make sure the screws are pointing outwards so you can adjust for those as well. Again, select the second hole from the bottom of the horn, so from this surface down below, and go 1, 2. And then when you slide in here, it may be a little tight, so you may need to use pliers to help pull them through or rock them in to their position. And that's it. Make sure you're in a neutral position before you start. All right, our next step is to build the power pod for the plane. And it'll come with 3 pieces for the body, some Velcro, motor mounts, a couple screws to hold the motor on, as well as zip ties, propeller for some alignment, and an ESC. All right, to assemble our power pod for the plane, we'll start with the body, and then we'll assemble the shock absorbing mount, and then we'll assemble the motor onto the mount, and then that assembly will go on to the shock absorbing foam. And then we'll do some wire management with the ESC. So let's go ahead and get started. You'll notice also when these come together that the middle one is a little bit shorter. And that's because when we place our ESC on, our wire management will go through there into the body of the plane. You do not need a lot of glue. Just make sure you know your stack. Just got to get enough to get it all put together. It covers, but don't worry about doing a lot. Put this one on. As well. Now what I do, I suggest to help make sure this thing is glued together, move it all, and get a square of some nature, and make sure your bottom piece here is as square as possible. And once that's set, you can continue on. Now, you need to cut out some a little bit shallow in some areas, but that's not a big deal. What's important is that this face here is flush, and your bottom's flush as well. What we will do is take an extra step and make sure that we add a little bit of strength around the unit, the mount itself. This will seal the and this will make sure we get glue on all our edges like that. Our next step is to put on here our shock absorber mount. So we'll start with the rough side on doing that. And it doesn't matter which side, just kind of line her up. Now, if you are dry, which I am now, you can take that and mount just like there. Hold it in place. Again, use your straight edge, right here, to make sure you're straight. And it's centered, pretty much. If it is, go ahead and break her loose and let it dry. I suggest you put in just a little bit of extra for a little bit of filler, not a lot. This helps strengthen the shock mount onto your pod. And your pod is going to be set aside, just let it dry and harden up. Now we'll go to the motor. Now the motor itself, it has 2 sets of screw holes, wide and narrow. It goes off just a little bit. All right, nice and snug. What's important is that the back of the motor has room to spin. And as we go to assemble this, now you may have gotten glue in your holes back here, and not to get too concerned. If you have a piece of wire or something, you can stick into the holes. If you don't have wire, you can take the doweling that you had when you're playing with the tip and stick it in there. And now we're going to put the zip ties on. So we're going to start with one and work our way in, like so. I like to make sure that they all kind of look the same on the plane when installed. Okay, now if you notice, I put the motor in such a fashion that the wires hang down. That's because I wanted to roll back this way. The ESC, assemble your 3 wires. Again, it doesn't matter which order you put them in. We mentioned before, and if you missed it, when we turn the motor on, it'll spin a certain direction. If it's going the wrong direction, all you need to do is change any of these 2. It's like this one and this one. Switch those, and the motor will turn the other direction. It's kind of nice with these brushless motors. So for some cable management, what we're going to do is we want the ESC to be somewhere up in this area here when we install it for air cooling. So we're going to take this, and we're going to want to have the wires kind of managed back. It did come with some Velcro. We're going to take the Velcro, and we're going to overlap one end, swing it around, and we'll tuck it in. And now we're ready to install. All right, because we're adding more weight to the plane and power, we want to go ahead and strengthen the back of this trailing edge for our rubber bands. So we're going to just take the leftover wood that we have, we'll mark it, like that. Next is our electronics install. That includes our power pod, our servo on our body, and the servo on the ailerons, and then our receiver. Now, we've already kind of gone through this one, which order to hook this up, but we'll go through it again. The first is the power pod. Go ahead and place your, let's move the wing out of the way here. Go ahead and string your wires through. And if you have big fingers like I do, you can get a pair of pliers and reach in there and grab that signal wire, bring it up, like so. Go ahead and let the power plug flow in there as well. Now on the power pod, what's important again is that lower area, that's where your cables are going to follow through. Lift up your hatch, hold it away with some fingers, and drop your power pod and slide it back gently. And it should be aligned up with the finger hole and the back here. Now you may have to lift it up to get your hatch in there and close it down. Your power pod should fit snug down below and in between as well. Later on, what we'll do is we'll peg this. Do not glue this in, but we'll go ahead and peg it in to hold it in there once we get everything lined up. At this point, we do have our pegs back in to hold down our wing. We're going to fish out the wire from the elevator and hook it. And we're going to bring in our aileron wires as well. So on our receiver, if you do remember, it's these lower connections will be using pins. The bottom one is ground. The next one is positive. The top is signal. In our servos, and generally always, the darker wire, which in this case is brown, is our ground. Top one's your signal. So the first is out of Rita, being rudder, don't have it on this one. Elevator, we do have it, is this wire here. So we'll plug that in the second location, like that. And again, channel 2 is right there, second pinned. And then throttle, or engine, that is the one from the power pod. It goes there. And finally, ailerons. Ailerons, the last one, go in. Now we're ready to put our electronics on the body. Go ahead and kind of just slide stuff in. Now the receiver, I found out, it works best if the back or the bottom of the servo snuggles in with the receiver right here. There's really no interference with this one, and it fits nice back so the battery can fit in. We're going to take the antennas. The first one is going to be pushed back in the body. The second one's going to come out the top, and it's going to form a 90-degree angle. So that way, no matter which way the play is going, it will pick up a signal. So we'll slide this in, and then this down inside there like that, in front of the servo. This wire is going to come out here, and then kind of just work your way in. Everything should be nice and snug. And once it's snug, hold it down and we'll put our, you do not want your rubber bands to go over the top of your ailerons. So we'll run that one there. And that's it. Okay, next step is to tighten down our motor mount and make sure it is square with the plane. And how we're going to do that is we're going to put a propeller on just temporarily. There's no battery in the plane, so we're not in fear of hurting ourselves. And then we're going to use zip ties to tighten up, down, left, and right. This is how we do it. So first, this motor you may have noticed has got a black spinner. Some do have silver. This is a left-handed thread, which means as you think you're tightening it or loosening it, you're actually tightening it. These are drone motors in your kits. Some are left hand, some are right hand. And it's not an issue. Just make sure your spinners are tight when you go to fly your plane. So we're going to go ahead and put the propeller on. Again, remember, numbers towards the front of the plane. And turn it backwards to tighten it. Finger tight. That's all we need. And what we'll do is we'll start just by snugging this up just a little bit here and a little bit here. And I will go ahead and tighten it from my point of view. And then you can see it from your point of view in a second. Up and down, and then if we turn it that way, you can see it's parallel to the wing. Now, once you're done with that, we're going to go ahead and peg this pod inside of the body. And the way we do that is we find a firm surface, we hang the power pod over a little bit, and we're going to make a mark with our pencil right about, not here, but just a little before. If you're not, it's just like a 1/4 inch in front. And that'll put us right in front of where our foam is inside. Something sharp to go through, going straight. I generally like to put like a little wire in first to make sure. And I'll make sure that I don't poke my hands. So it's coming through, take it out, and then I run my rod through. It's a lot of meat to get through, so if you approach from the other side as well. And once it's through, then you can put your power pod rod in. And then I take it and I clip off those edges. So, and there you go. Now your power pod's firm in there. You're square. And if you ever get unsquare again, it's not a problem. Remember, just tighten these zip ties up a little bit. Final step is to cut these zip ties off. Like so. Leave a little bit on there so in case you want to tighten them up a little bit more, you can. Your plane's done. All right, last step is putting the battery in. So first time putting the battery in, make sure the propeller's off because you don't want your receiver to go into a power up mode when you put your battery in. So take your propeller off, make sure, flip your plane over, pull out your power plug. And again, I use like a wire with a hook to get it out the first time, a pair of pliers. But once you get it out, you should be able to pull it out just enough to where it sticks out. Your power plug, remember, has a flat spot. Don't get them reversed. And go ahead and plug it in. And in this case, whatever it takes to get it in, I found this battery, and you can change batteries also, as we've talked about. This battery goes better in like this, and I put as much of the wire in as possible. You don't want the wire to hit the ground, so I take it and kind of snug it in there. On some of my planes, I will actually have a piece of tape here, or a door that I put on there. You can do that, but that's it. Now you're ready to go and fly. When your plane's done, you can do some additional things to kind of tighten it up a little bit, make it a little stronger. You can place along the front edge some packaging tape, heavy-duty packaging tape on the edges, because as you're learning, these will be hitting all sorts of things, houses, fences, limbs, trees. Also on the leading edge of the rudder and the elevator, or the vertical stabilizer, horizontal stabilizer, you can do it. And then in addition, I place packaging tape from here all the way back underneath because all this would be rubbing on the ground as you land. Finally, under the wings, I put fiber reinforced tape because you will be doing loops and stuff like that, and it helps strengthen the plane's wing quite a bit. And then finally, I put a straw here to slide in my antenna to keep it just from kind of dragging around and stuff like that. So there you go. Hope you have a great time flying, and go ahead and comment below to see how you like things.